Hi, it's Kerri Wall, your BC Greens candidate in Kootenay-Rockies. I'm coming to you today from my home in Tsakahak, that is Fernie in the Tunaha language. All of the Kootenay-Rockies riding is within the traditional and unceded territory of the Tunaha Nation. We call this Amakas Tunaha. Indigenous relations and reconciliation is a key part of the 2024 Green Party platform here in British Columbia. We recognize that Indigenous rights are inherent, existing, and cannot be infringed upon. We have this section of our platform as the very first section in the very first chapter, which is called Thriving People. Indigenous relations are extremely important to the party and to me personally. My personal thoughts on Indigenous relations and reconciliation are related mostly to climate change and health outcomes. We know that Indigenous people have much higher rates of morbidity and mortality. Indigenous people have health inequities that are completely unfair and created by society due to colonialism and racism. Their life expectancy is way too short, and something can be done about this. When it comes to climate change, I really care because climate change, urgent public health issue, and First Nations communities are on the front lines of climate change impacts, and they are doing a lot to combat climate change in terms of mitigation and adaptation, which is great, and they need to be supported. I want to talk quickly about DRIPA. That's the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. You may have heard of this. It's provincial legislation that was passed unanimously in the legislature almost 5 years ago at the end of 2019. DRIPA, the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, is the BC response to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. I fully support, and the BC Greens fully support DRIPA. You may have been hearing from other parties, other people, that there may be questions about land use or land ownership. There is a land ownership question everywhere in British Columbia because governments have settled here and asserted domination over the land without proper consultation with Indigenous people. So pretty much the entire province, the land question is up for grabs. It is being litigated over and over again in courts, which is expensive and antagonistic and doesn't really settle the problem. When we look at these individual court cases, this expensive, time-consuming process looks at individual cases, takes forever. What the BC Greens propose is that we need to come to the table in good faith, government to government, with Indigenous nations, and talk about the land question in an open and transparent manner. This is not what's been done with the NDP. The NDP are not being public about it, and they're not engaging communities, people, landowners, and municipalities. That's a problem. The BC Conservatives have been asserting that maybe you don't get to keep your land, or maybe there's a problem with your land. The problem is colonial. The problem is more than 100 years old. The problem is ongoing. It's time we clarify land ownership, that we all come to the table and negotiate together with First Nations so that we can have a full understanding of where we operate. The only place in the province that has that is Haida Gwaii because they have a modern agreement.